when justice fails the innocent. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine being stopped in the middle of the street, not because you did something wrong, but simply because of who you are, where you stand, or how you look. Imagine the fear, the confusion, the helplessness when power is used not to protect, but to control. The truth doesn't matter. The uniform does. This isn't just a story. It's a reflection of what happens every day in our world. People humiliated, silenced, and punished for nothing. Innocent hearts crushed under the weight of corruption. Those who should defend the weak turn their backs, hiding behind rules that no longer protect justice. But one man, a man who once had everything, decided to face that system head-on. Ethan Cole, a billionaire who traded his luxury for humility, his power for truth. He disguised himself as an ordinary driver to see the world through the eyes of those who suffer. What he discovered wasn't just unfair, it was heartbreaking. This story is more than drama. It's a mirror of reality, a cry for empathy in a world that has forgotten how to feel. And if you've ever been treated unfairly, if you've ever seen someone lose hope because of injustice, then this story is yours too. So before we begin, I want to ask you one thing. Asterisk, asterisk, subscribe, asterisk, 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 share, asterisk, asterisk, and asterisk, asterisk, comment, asterisk, asterisk below. Tell the world what justice means to you. Because every comment, every share, helps this message reach one more heart. Together, we can wake up those who have stopped caring. Now, imagine it's you, standing there, being blamed, unheard, unseen. Would you stay silent or fight for the truth? The hidden road. The city never slept, yet Ethan Cole often felt invisible inside it. Once a billionaire known for luxury cars and private jets, he now stood in front of a simple garage, his hands gripping an old steering wheel he hadn't touched in years. The smell of motor oil and dust filled the air, a strange comfort for someone who once lived surrounded by perfume and polished marble. Ethan had built his fortune from scratch, or so the newspapers said. But money, he learned, was a mask that blinded people faster than power itself. His employees smiled when he entered a room, but he could feel how fake it was. They feared him, they envied him, and most of all, they lied to him. The final straw came when his most trusted manager, Lucas Dean, embezzled millions from the company's charity foundation, money meant for orphan children. Ethan felt betrayed, not because of the loss, but because no one around him had dared to tell him the truth. Everyone knew. Everyone stayed silent. That night, Ethan made a decision that would change everything. He opened his old garage, the same one where he fixed cars as a teenager before his company existed, and looked at the old photo of his late father, smiling with grease-stained hands. "You always said I'd forget where I came from," Ethan whispered. "Maybe you were right." So he shaved his beard, wore plain clothes, and disappeared. The billionaire became an ordinary man again. 3 weeks later, a small auto company called Silverline Motors posted a job opening. Driver needed. Experience preferred. No background checks required. Ethan smiled when he saw the ad. He arrived the next day in an old truck and parked outside. The receptionist barely looked at him. "You're here for the driver position?" she asked without a smile. "Yes," Ethan said quietly. "Fill this out." She shoved a clipboard toward him without eye contact. Her nails tapped impatiently on the counter as he wrote down a false name, Ethan Reed. When the interview ended, the hiring manager looked unimpressed. "You've got some driving experience, Mr. Reed." "I used to drive for some private clients," Ethan replied vaguely. "Fine, you start tomorrow. Pays low, hours are long. We don't tolerate mistakes." Ethan nodded. He wasn't there for comfort. He was there for truth. The first morning behind the wheel of the company's black sedan felt like time travel. The engine purred under his touch. He drove through quiet neighborhoods, picking up executives, assistants, and sometimes spoiled heirs who treated him like heir. One of them was Olivia Parker, daughter of the company's CEO, known for her sharp tone and colder stare. When she stepped into the back seat, Ethan could feel the perfume of power fill the car. "Drive fast." "I'm late," she snapped, without even glancing at him. "Yes, ma'am," Ethan replied calmly, his eyes steady on the road. She scrolled through her phone, complaining about incompetent people, lazy workers, and the chaos her father had to handle daily. Ethan listened silently, every word a reminder of what his own company had become, a mirror of arrogance and distance. When the car stopped, she left without saying thank you. Ethan smiled faintly. "Same world," he whispered. "Different angle." That night, sitting alone in his rented room, he realized he had already begun to see what money had hidden from him for years. Respect wasn't earned by status. It was revealed by how people treated those they believed were below them. The driver's secret. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan adapted to his new rhythm. The billionaire who once gave orders now waited in long lines at the cafeteria, carried luggage, and held doors open for others who never looked back to thank him. He didn't mind. Every act of silence revealed another layer of truth. Most of the company's employees treated him as if he were invisible, except one. Her name was Clara, a young mechanic who worked in the back of the garage. Her uniform was always stained with oil, and her hair tied up with a pencil instead of a clip. She had a habit of humming old songs while fixing engines. Ethan noticed her the very first day, not because she was different, but because she never looked down on anyone. One afternoon, Ethan was polishing the company's luxury car when Clara approached. "Hey, new guy," she said with a grin. "You clean faster than anyone I've seen." Ethan chuckled softly. "I've had some practice." "Practice, huh? You used to work in cleaning or something?" "In a way," he said. "I cleaned up a lot of messes, some bigger than cars." She laughed, shaking her head. "You talk weird, you know that? But I like it." Her light-hearted honesty reminded him of the world he'd forgotten. A week later, Ethan was assigned to drive Mr. Parker, the CEO of Silverline Motors, and Olivia's father. It was the first time Ethan saw the man up close. Parker was in his late 50s, with silver hair and the kind of charm that hid a dangerous ambition. "Name?" the CEO asked as he got into the car. "Ethan Reed, sir. You're new here. Drive me to the central office, and don't talk unless spoken to." "Yes, sir." The drive was quiet until Parker received a call. Ethan kept his focus on the road, but listened carefully. "Tell Lucas I want the deal finalized," Parker said through the phone. "I don't care how he makes the numbers work. Just make it happen before the audit." Ethan froze. Lucas, the same name as the man who had betrayed him months ago. Could it be the same person? The voice, the tone, the arrogance. It all matched. Ethan's heartbeat quickened. If this was true, then the man sitting in his back seat was working with the very traitor who destroyed his charity fund. When the call ended, Ethan adjusted the mirror slightly. Parker's reflection showed calm, power, and deceit. "Everything okay, sir?" he asked, pretending to be casual. "Just focus on driving," Parker said. "You drivers like to listen too much." Ethan smiled faintly. Old habits die hard. Later that evening, Ethan stayed after hours, pretending to check the car's tires while observing the employees leaving. In the dim light, he saw Lucas Dean, the man who had vanished with his stolen fortune, step out of the main office. He looked thinner, more nervous, but it was definitely him. Lucas handed an envelope to Mr. Parker, who counted the money quickly and nodded. Then, Parker patted his back. "Good work. No one must know where this came from." Ethan clenched his jaw. He wanted to reveal himself right there, but he knew the timing wasn't right. Revenge without truth was just noise. That night, in his small room, Ethan wrote down everything he had seen. His handwriting was messy, but his plan was clear. He would expose them from within. Over the next few days, Ethan grew closer to Clara. Often stayed late too, fixing old engines that no one cared about. One night, she caught him staring at a wall filled with photos. Employees smiling with their families, and one old picture of a charity event. That was the Hope Drive, she said softly. It was supposed to help poor kids get education. But the program stopped suddenly last year. Ethan nodded. Do you know why? Rumor says the funds vanished. Management blamed the banks, but people whispered something else, that the CEO had a secret deal. Ethan's eyes darkened. And what do you think? I think when rich men stop caring, poor kids stop dreaming, she replied quietly. Her words hit him harder than she could imagine. He wanted to tell her the truth, that he was the founder of that very charity, the one that vanished because of the corruption she just described. But he couldn't, not yet. The truth had to come out when no one could deny it. A few days later, Olivia entered the garage unexpectedly. Who authorized this junkyard to use my father's cars for test drives? She shouted, pointing at Ethan. He calmly wiped his hands on a cloth. Ma'am, we were just testing the brakes. I don't want excuses from drivers. You're paid to obey, not to talk, she snapped. Clara stepped forward. With respect, Miss Parker, he's just doing his job. Olivia turned to her sharply. And you are? Someone who doesn't enjoy watching people get humiliated, Clara said, her voice steady. Olivia's face flushed. You'll regret that attitude. She stormed off, her heels echoing through the garage. Ethan looked at Clara, his expression calm but proud. Thank you, he said softly. She shrugged. Someone has to stand up when others stay quiet. Ethan smiled. That's rarer than gold these days. As he watched her return to her tools, Ethan realized something unexpected. Beneath the dirt, the lies, and the disguise, he was starting to feel alive again. For the first time in years, the billionaire who had everything was rediscovering what it meant to earn respect without money. Shadows of betrayal. The next morning came with heavy rain. The parking lot glistened like glass as Ethan pulled the car out of the garage. Every drop that hit the windshield reminded him of the storm gathering inside him. He wasn't just pretending anymore. He was fighting a war of truth under a false name. Lucas Dean's sudden return still echoed in his mind. Ethan knew Lucas would eventually slip up, but he couldn't rush it. He needed evidence, something real, something no one could twist. By noon, the company buzzed with tension. Rumors about financial audits spread through the halls. Employees whispered about cutbacks, fraud, and secret accounts. Clara noticed Ethan's silence. You look like a man with a storm behind his eyes, she said, handing him a cup of coffee. He smiled faintly. Maybe I'm just seeing things more clearly than before. She studied him for a moment. You ever get the feeling the people in charge only pretend to be human? Ethan nodded slowly. I know that feeling better than anyone. Before she could reply, Olivia appeared again, this time less furious, but still distant. Driver, she said sharply, my father needs a pickup from the corporate tower downtown. Don't be late. Yes, ma'am, Ethan replied with quiet obedience. But inside, his mind was already calculating. The corporate tower was a monument of glass and greed. Ethan parked outside and waited. When Mr. Parker emerged, he wasn't alone. Lucas Dean walked beside him, holding a briefcase. They exchanged words that Ethan couldn't hear, but their faces said everything: fear, secrecy, control. As they got into the car, Lucas sat beside Parker, flipping through papers. If this gets out, we're done, Lucas muttered. It won't, Parker snapped. Our driver doesn't even know what day it is. Ethan's grip tightened on the wheel. He drove silently, while memorizing every word. When they reached the private warehouse on the outskirts of the city, Parker told him, "Wait outside." Ethan nodded, but as soon as they entered, he stepped out of the car and moved closer to the building's side window. Inside, under dim lights, he saw stacks of boxes labeled as charity donations. They were filled with electronics, jewelry, and cash. It was a smuggling operation disguised as generosity. The same charity he had created to help children was now being used as a front for illegal trade. His heart sank. He pulled out his phone, taking photos quietly, careful not to be seen. His hands shook as he captured the evidence. The men inside laughed, counting money as if it were air. The faces of the orphans he once helped flashed in his mind, and rage filled his chest like fire. When Parker and Lucas came out, Ethan was back in the driver's seat, face calm. Parker looked satisfied. "Take. Use back," he ordered. On the drive, Parker leaned back. "You know, Reed, loyalty is everything in this business. People who stay quiet go far." Ethan met his gaze in the mirror. "And people who lie," Parker smirked, "they go even farther." That night, Ethan transferred the photos to an old USB drive and hid it inside a hollow wrench in the garage. If something happened to him, Clara would know where to look. He didn't fully understand why he trusted her, but something about her kindness felt like the only honest thing left in his life. Later, as the storm outside worsened, Clara knocked on his door. "You left early today? Everything okay?" Ethan hesitated. "Just tired. Too many miles." She stepped closer, her expression soft. "You don't talk about your past much. Feels like you're running from something." He smiled sadly. "Maybe I'm running toward something instead." She tilted her head. "And what's that?" "The truth." Her eyes searched his, as if trying to read the hidden life behind his calmness. "Be careful with that. Truth has teeth." He nodded. "So do lies." The next day brought an unexpected visitor to the garage, 2 auditors from the financial board. They moved through the office like wolves, asking for records, accounts, signatures. Parker pretended to cooperate, but Ethan could sense his growing fear. By evening, word spread that the auditors would return the next week with investigators. Parker held a private meeting with Lucas, Olivia, and a few top managers. Ethan was ordered to drive them to a secluded restaurant outside the city. Inside the car, the tension was heavy. Olivia asked, "Dad, what if they find something?" "They won't," Parker said coldly. "We'll make sure of it." Lucas added nervously, "I've already moved some files offshore." But the drivers, mechanics, anyone who's seen too much should be managed. Ethan's eyes flicked to the mirror, but he kept driving, pretending not to hear. When they reached the restaurant, Ethan parked and waited. He could see their reflections through the glass walls, voices raised, fingers pointing, fear growing. The empire was crumbling, and they didn't even know who was sitting outside their door, holding the match. He recorded everything with a hidden dash camera. Hours later, Clara found him sitting alone in the dark garage. "You're planning something, aren't you?" she asked quietly. Ethan didn't answer immediately. "Sometimes silence is the only weapon that works." She frowned. "Whatever you're doing, don't do it alone." He looked at her, his voice low and steady. "Clara, if something happens to me, there's a wrench on the 3rd shelf in my locker. Keep it safe." "Ethan, you're scaring me." He gave a small smile. "Then, promise me you'll trust me when the time comes." She nodded reluctantly. "I promise." As she left, he turned off the lights, leaving only the hum of rain and the quiet promise of justice waiting in the shadows. The breaking point. The following morning began with an unsettling quietness. The kind that made the walls seem closer and the air feel heavier. Ethan arrived at work early, but the garage felt different. Whispers followed him as he walked past the workers. Something had shifted overnight. Clara approached him, looking pale. "Ethan," she whispered, "I overheard something." Mr. Parker told security to check everyone's lockers today. He said someone's been leaking information. Ethan's pulse quickened. The wrench. He kept his expression calm. Did they already start? Not yet, she said, but they're moving fast. He nodded slowly. Then I guess I need to stay one step ahead. Before she could ask more, Olivia walked into the garage, clipboard in hand. "Everyone line up," she ordered. "We'll be checking lockers and personal items. Routine inspection." Ethan forced himself to stay composed as she approached. When the guard reached his locker, Ethan casually stepped forward. "You don't have to bother with mine, Mom," he said, smiling faintly. "Just tools and some clothes. Protocol," she said curtly. The guard opened the door. Inside, everything looked normal, because the wrench wasn't there. Ethan had moved it earlier, hiding it under the seat of his assigned car. A small relief passed through him. As the inspection continued, Ethan's phone buzzed with an unknown message. "Asterisk, meet me at the East Gate at 8 p.m. Come alone. L. Asterisk Lucas." Ethan stared at the screen, mind racing. Was it a trap? Or had Lucas finally realized how deep Parker's corruption went? Either way, he had to go. The truth had waited long enough. The sky was bruised with orange and gray when Ethan arrived at the East Gate that night. The rain from the previous days had left the ground muddy, the air damp with secrets. He saw Lucas standing near a delivery van, smoking nervously. "You came, Lucas," muttered, flicking his cigarette away. "I wasn't sure you would. Why did you call me?" Ethan asked. Lucas looked around, paranoid. "I know who you are. Ethan Cole, the billionaire everyone thinks vanished. I recognized your eyes the moment I saw you. What are you doing here, man? Are you out of your mind?" Ethan stepped closer, his voice low. "I'm here to clean the mess you made." Lucas swallowed hard. "You don't understand. Parker's bigger than both of us. If he finds out you're alive, he'll bury you. He's laundering money through fake charity shipments. I only did what he told me." "You stole from children," Ethan said coldly. "And you want me to believe you were just following orders?" "I'm not proud of it," Lucas snapped. "I thought it was just numbers, transfers. But it's darker than that now. He's using the foundation for black market trades. Cash, diamond stuff, I can't even track anymore. You want justice? Fine, but don't drag me down with you." Ethan's eyes hardened. "You dragged yourself down long ago." Lucas's voice trembled. "You don't get it. Parker's meeting some buyers tomorrow night. If you can get proof of that deal, it'll end him. But after that, I'm gone. Far away." "Where?" Ethan asked. "Somewhere Parker's reach won't find me." He stepped back, fear plain on his face. "Good luck, Ethan. You'll need it." As Lucas disappeared into the fog, Ethan's phone buzzed again, an alert from the security app he'd secretly installed in the car. A live feed popped up showing 2 guards breaking into the garage. They were searching the vehicles. One of them pulled out the wrench. Ethan's heart dropped. Clara. He raced back to the compound, his tires cutting through the wet road. When he arrived, the guards were already escorting Clara out, her hands trembling. "I told you, I don't know what that is," she pleaded. Olivia stood nearby, arms crossed. "Found inside your friend's car," she said coldly. "That's enough for me." "Olivia!" Ethan shouted, stepping forward. "She didn't do anything." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "And why do you care so much, driver?" Ethan's chest burned with restrained fury. "Because she's innocent." Parker emerged from the shadows, his tone slow and venomous. "Mr. Reed, you seem unusually invested in this situation. Perhaps we should talk privately." Ethan followed him into the office. Parker poured himself a drink, the ice clinking like ticking seconds. "You've been quite the mystery, Red," he said, pacing slowly. "Too observant, too quiet, not like a driver at all." Ethan met his gaze. "Maybe I just care about the people who actually work." Parker chuckled darkly. "Care, that's a dangerous word in business. You see, loyalty matters more. And I'm starting to wonder where yours lies." "I'm loyal to truth," Ethan replied evenly. Parker's smirk faded. "Then you're in the wrong company." He turned to the guard. "Keep the girl locked in the storeroom until we verify her story." Ethan clenched his fists. "You can't." Parker raised a hand. "One more word, and you'll join her." Ethan stepped back, his jaw tight. For the first time in years, the billionaire who once commanded empires felt powerless. Yet deep down, beneath the fear, a spark of defiance ignited. He would not let Parker destroy another life. As the night stretched on, Ethan sat alone in his room, staring at the hidden USB drive in his hand. He knew what had to be done. Tomorrow, the meeting would happen. The trade, the final proof. And he would be there not as a driver, but as the man who came back from the shadows to expose the truth. Tomorrow, Ethan Cole would rise again. The trap unfolds. The night of the deal arrived like the calm before a storm. The city lights blinked through the fog, and the wind carried the scent of gasoline and danger. Ethan sat in his car outside the old industrial warehouse, the same place where Parker had hidden his smuggling operation. Inside that building, the final exchange would happen, the one that would either destroy Parker or destroy Ethan for good. He had set everything in motion. The hidden dash camera was ready. The microphone under the steering wheel was live. And a trusted journalist he had secretly contacted through an anonymous email was waiting for the signal. The moment Parker's confession went live, there would be no going back. Ethan's eyes caught the reflection of headlights approaching. A black SUV stopped at the entrance. Out stepped Parker, Lucas, and two men in suits who looked more like enforcers than businessmen. They carried metal briefcases, the kind that never held good news. Ethan straightened his jacket and stepped out as Parker waved him over. "You drive tonight," Parker said. "We'll be heading inside for a short negotiation. Keep the engine running." "Yes, sir." Ethan bowed slightly, keeping his tone neutral. The mask was still on, for one last time. As the men disappeared into the warehouse, Ethan turned on the voice recorder. He could hear the echo of their conversation faintly through the open door. Parker's voice was steady, confident, the voice of a man who believed he owned the world. "Gentlemen, this shipment ensures we stay untouchable," Parker said. "No paper trail, no witnesses, just cash and loyalty." Lucas's voice trembled slightly. "And the charity?" Parker laughed. "A beautiful cover story. Even angels need funding, don't they?" Ethan's jaw tightened. He pressed the record button harder, anger surging through him. Every word was a dagger to the memory of the children he once vowed to protect. Suddenly, one of the guards outside the building began to walk toward his car. Ethan quickly lowered the volume on the recorder and pretended to adjust the radio. The guard tapped on the window. "You waiting for someone?" "Just following orders," Ethan said calmly. "Boss said to stay put." The guard eyed him suspiciously before walking away. Ethan exhaled slowly, his pulse hammering. He had to stay composed. One mistake, and everything would collapse. Inside the warehouse, the voices grew louder. Parker was getting impatient. Enough talk, let's finalize this. The sound of briefcases opening filled the air, followed by the unmistakable rustle of cash. Then, a sharp crack gunfire. Ethan froze. Another shot followed, then shouts. He jumped from the car and rushed toward the door. Inside, chaos erupted. One of the buyers lay wounded on the floor. Lucas was holding a gun, and Parker was screaming, "You fool! What have you done?" Lucas backed away, panic in his eyes. "They were going to kill us." "I heard them. They said they didn't need us anymore." Parker lunged at him, knocking the gun from his hand. "You ruined everything." Ethan stepped in, shouting, "Stop!" His voice echoed across the warehouse. Everyone turned toward him. The billionaire driver stood tall, his disguise fading with every breath. "Ethan?" Parker whispered in disbelief. "Ethan Cole?" The room went silent. The revelation hung in the air like thunder. "You're supposed to be dead," Parker hissed. "What is this?" Ethan walked forward slowly. "A lesson you forgot long ago. Money doesn't make men powerful. Truth does." Lucas stumbled backward. "He's been spying on us," he shouted. "He's recording everything." Ethan raised his phone, "And the world will hear it." Parker's face twisted with rage. "You think anyone will believe you? You have no proof." Ethan pressed a button. "I have your voice, your deals, your crimes, all sent live to the press as we speak." Parker froze. "You wouldn't." The sound of sirens sliced through the night. Red and blue lights painted the walls. Ethan turned as police vehicles surrounded the warehouse. He had timed it perfectly. A journalist had done their job. The trap had sprung. "Mr. Parker," a voice shouted through a megaphone, "step outside with your hands up." The guards raised their weapons, but Parker's hand shook. He looked around, realizing it was over. For the first time, the man who ruled through fear looked afraid. Lucas dropped to his knees. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he muttered. "I just wanted out." "You chose your fate," Ethan said coldly. The truth always collects its debt. As officers stormed in, Parker was dragged out shouting threats. "You'll regret this, Cole. You'll lose everything." Ethan's expression didn't change. "I already did," he said quietly. An hour later, the warehouse was empty except for Ethan and Clara, who had been released once the truth came to light. She stood near him, shivering slightly under the flashing police lights. "You really were someone else," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "Someone I don't want to be again." "You saved a lot of lives tonight," she said softly. He looked at her, his eyes tired. "But peaceful." "Maybe. But it doesn't bring back the years I lost believing money could fix everything." Clara smiled faintly. "You don't need money to fix what's real." For the first time in a long while, Ethan smiled. A real human smile. "You sound like my father," he said quietly. "He used to tell me that the worth of a man isn't in what he owns, but in what he gives." "And what did you give tonight?" she asked gently. "Everything I had left," Ethan replied. "And maybe that's enough." They stood in silence as dawn broke over the horizon. The sky glowed with soft gold, washing away the nights. Darkness. The city began to wake, unaware that a billionaire had just become a man again. Not for power, not for revenge, but for redemption. Redemption's dawn. Morning arrived quietly, like the first breath after drowning. The storm had passed, but its echoes lingered through the city. Ethan stood on the rooftop of his old building, staring at the skyline that once belonged to him. The empire he had built was gone, yet for the first time, he felt lighter than air. The newspapers were already filled with headlines. Corporate scandal exposed. Charity fraud uncovered. CEO arrested in multi-million scheme. Parker's face was everywhere. The same man who had thought himself untouchable. Justice, it seemed, had finally woken up. Ethan took a slow breath. The phone in his hand buzzed with messages from old partners and friends. People who once ignored him now wanted to reconnect. He turned it off without reading a single one. A knock came at the door. It was Clara, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You missed the news conference," she said gently. "I didn't need to be there," Ethan replied. "The truth speaks for itself." She stepped beside him, offering a cup. "Still, you deserve credit. You brought them down." Ethan shook his head. "No, I just reminded them that power has consequences." They stood together in silence for a moment, the wind brushing against their faces. Below, life continued. Cars honking, people rushing, children laughing. The world had not stopped for his redemption. It simply carried on, as it always did. Later that day, Ethan visited the orphanage that had once received funds from his foundation. The building was smaller than he remembered, paint peeling, windows cracked. Yet the laughter of children still filled the air. When he entered, an elderly woman recognized him immediately. "Mr. Cole?" she whispered, her eyes wide. "You came back?" Ethan smiled softly. "I was never really gone, Sister Margaret. Just lost." She took his hands. "You have no idea what this means to us. The funding stopped, but we never gave up hope. The children prayed every night for a miracle." He looked around the room. The children were playing with worn-out toys, their faces bright despite the poverty surrounding them. Ethan felt something deep within his chest shift, the kind of warmth that no fortune could buy. He knelt down beside a little boy who was drawing on a torn piece of cardboard. "What are you making?" Ethan asked. The boy grinned. "A car. One day I'm going to drive it fast like the ones on TV." Ethan chuckled softly. "Then maybe I can help you build a real one." The boy's eyes lit up. "Really?" "Really," Ethan said. "But you have to promise me something." "What?" "Never forget to stop and help someone walking while you're driving." The boy nodded seriously. "Promise." Sister Margaret wiped a tear from her eye. "You sound just like your father," she whispered. Ethan smiled. "He'd probably tell me it's about time I listened to him." Days turned into weeks. The world moved on from the scandal, as it always did. But for Ethan, life had changed permanently. He sold his remaining shares, donated most of his wealth to rebuild the orphanage, and started a new foundation, one that couldn't be corrupted, because he would no longer lead it from a tower of glass. Clara joined him as a coordinator, handling logistics and fieldwork. Together, they turned the broken pieces of a false empire into something real. One afternoon, as they were finishing paperwork, Clara looked at him thoughtfully. "Do you ever miss it?" "Miss what?" Ethan asked. "The life you had. The power, the attention." Ethan leaned back, thinking for a moment. "Sometimes I miss the illusion, but I don't miss the emptiness that came with it. It's strange, when I had everything, I felt invisible. Now that I have nothing, people actually see me." She smiled. "That's because now you look at them too." Ethan laughed quietly. "Maybe that's the secret. Wealth isn't measured in what we keep. It's measured in what we give away." That evening, they hosted a small gathering at the orphanage's courtyard to celebrate the reopening. Volunteers, teachers, and local families filled the space with warmth. Children ran around playing with handmade paper lanterns, their laughter rising into the night. As the lights dimmed, Clara handed Ethan a microphone. "Say something," she urged. Ethan hesitated, then stepped forward. The crowd quieted. He looked at the faces around him, faces full of hope, faces that had once been shadows in the corners of a broken system. "I spent most of my life chasing numbers," he began softly. "Money, success, respect. I thought those things defined who I was. But they don't. What defines us is how we treat people when no one's watching. It's how we use what we have. To lift others, not ourselves. He paused, his voice steady but emotional. There was a time I believed being a billionaire made me powerful. But tonight, seeing all of you here, I realized that true power isn't wealth. It's compassion. The crowd applauded gently. Clara smiled at him with quiet pride. The children released their paper lanterns into the sky, filling the darkness with floating light. Ethan looked up, watching them drift higher. For my father, he whispered. For the children, for second chances. Clara stepped beside him. For truth, she added. He nodded, his eyes reflecting the golden glow above. Yes, for truth. As the final lantern disappeared into the horizon, Ethan Cole felt at peace. He had walked through greed, betrayal, and loneliness, only to find that the greatest wealth of all was the ability to start over, humble and whole. The billionaire was gone. The man remained. And that, at last, was enough. The cost of freedom. The sun was setting when Ethan closed the orphanage gates for the evening. The laughter of children still echoed in his ears, a melody that felt purer than any success he had ever known. But deep down, he understood that freedom came with a price. And he had only just begun to pay it. Though the public praised him as a hero, the business world saw him as a traitor. Former partners filed lawsuits. Investors withdrew from his name. The empire he had spent decades building was crumbling into dust. Yet Ethan didn't flinch. For the first time, he owed nothing to anyone. He rented a modest apartment near the orphanage, one with peeling paint, thin walls, and a view of the street below. At night, he'd hear people laughing outside, music drifting from nearby cafes. It reminded him of the life he'd ignored for too long. Clara visited often. She brought food, helped organize paperwork, and tried to convince him to return to public life. You could start again, she said one evening as they shared tea. The world still listens to your name. Ethan shook his head. Names fade, Clara. What matters is what remains after they do. She sighed softly. You talk like an old poet. Maybe I've earned the right, he said with a faint smile. A few weeks later, a letter arrived, handwritten, official-looking. It was from the government's Financial Investigation Bureau. They requested Ethan's testimony regarding the corruption case, this time as a key witness. The trial of Parker and Lucas was set to begin in 2 weeks. Ethan knew it wouldn't be easy. Parker's lawyers would tear him apart, blaming him for everything. The press would dig into his past, his mistakes, his disappearance. But this was the final step, closure not just for him, but for everyone Parker had hurt. The day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was crowded with journalists, flashing cameras, and murmurs of anticipation. Parker sat in the defendant's chair, sharp suit, cold eyes, the same mask of confidence he had worn all his life. Beside him, Lucas looked pale and defeated. Ethan took the stand. For hours, he recounted everything: the embezzlement, the smuggling, the false charity. The defense tried to twist his words, but his evidence was undeniable. The recordings, the photos, the witness accounts, they all pointed in one direction. At one point, Parker leaned forward and said, "You think they'll remember you as a savior, Cole? You destroyed yourself to bring me down." Ethan looked at him steadily. "Maybe, but at least I can sleep at night." A murmur spread through the courtroom. Even the judge looked shaken. When the verdict came, Parker was found guilty on multiple counts. Lucas, who had cooperated at the end, received a reduced sentence. As Parker was led away, he turned once more to Ethan. "You could have joined me. We could have ruled together." Ethan's answer was calm and final. "You can't rule over a world you don't respect." After the trial, life became quieter. The media eventually moved on to newer scandals. Ethan spent his days helping expand the orphanage's programs, education, art, small business training. He wanted the children to grow not into workers, but dreamers. One afternoon, he received a visit from a young journalist named Daniel. "Mr. Cole," Daniel said, notebook in hand, "I want to write your story. The truth, not the headlines. People need to hear what really happened." Ethan hesitated. "Stories are dangerous things, Daniel. Once they're told, they don't belong to you anymore." "Maybe that's the point," Daniel said. "Truth should belong to everyone." Ethan looked at him thoughtfully. "Then write it, but don't make me a hero. Make me a man who learned too late that the cost of freedom is honesty." Daniel smiled. "That's exactly how I'll write it." Months later, the article went viral. People were moved not by Ethan's wealth or downfall, but by his humanity. Messages flooded in from across the world, people thanking him for reminding them that redemption was still possible. One letter, however, stood out. It was from Lucas Dean, written from prison. Ethan. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to say thank you. You showed me that even after all the lies, there's still a way back. I'm working with other inmates to create a literacy program. Maybe it's not much, but it's something real. Maybe one day I'll see the world the way you do. Lucas. Ethan read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in his drawer. For the first time, he didn't feel anger, only peace. The world had turned, the circle closed. Justice, it seemed, had touched even those who had fallen furthest. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara joined him on the rooftop of the orphanage. "You did it," she said softly. "You found freedom." Ethan watched the sky turning gold and crimson. "Freedom isn't something you find," he replied. "It's something you earn every day by choosing what's right, even when it costs you." Clara smiled. "And what does it cost you today?" He looked at her, his eyes warm. "Only the past, and I'm finally ready to let it go." She reached for his hand, and for a long moment they stood together in silence. The world below them buzzed with life, but up there, everything was still. Two souls who had walked through ruin and found grace on the other side. The cost of freedom had been high, but it had bought Ethan something priceless. Peace without price, and a life worth living. A new beginning. Spring came quietly, painting the city in soft greens and golds. The harsh winds of winter had passed, and with them, much of the pain that once haunted Ethan's soul. The world around him seemed to breathe again, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to breathe with it. The orphanage was thriving. The classrooms buzzed with laughter, the gardens bloomed with color, and the sound of piano music echoed from the hall where Clara had started evening lessons. Ethan often watched from the window, his heart light with pride and disbelief. This, not boardrooms, not skyscrapers, was what legacy truly meant. One morning, Clara approached him with a grin. "We've been invited to speak at the city university," she said. "They want to hear about rebuilding after loss, about resilience." Ethan chuckled softly. "You mean they want to hear a billionaire talk about being broke?" "They want to hear a man talk about being human," she corrected. He looked down for a moment, thoughtful. "I'm not sure I'm ready to be anyone's example." "You already are," she said. "But you can choose what kind." The lecture hall was full when Ethan stepped onto the stage. He hadn't seen that many cameras since his last corporate conference years ago. Yet this time, it felt different. The faces watching him weren't investors seeking profit. They were students searching for meaning. He began simply. "Once, I thought success was measured by how high I could climb, but the higher I went, the less I could see. It's strange how money builds walls that look like windows. The audience fell silent, hanging on every word. I lost everything, he continued. Not because someone took it from me, but because I forgot why I was earning it in the first place. The world doesn't need more rich men. It needs honest ones. A student raised her hand. Do you regret it all? Ethan smiled gently. No, I regret not falling sooner. Because hitting the ground taught me how to stand again. The room erupted into quiet applause, the kind that comes not from admiration, but from understanding. After the event, a young man approached him outside. Sir, my father worked for your old company, he said nervously. He lost his job when it shut down. But after your story came out, he started volunteering at shelters. He said you reminded him that good men can make mistakes and still do something right. Ethan's eyes softened. Tell him thank you for proving that second chances belong to everyone. The young man nodded and walked away, leaving Ethan standing under the sunlight, the wind ruffling his hair like an old friend. Clara joined him, her expression warm. You see? You didn't just rebuild yourself, Ethan. You rebuilt people's faith. He smiled faintly. Maybe that's all I ever wanted. Months passed. The orphanage grew into a network of community centers across the region. Schools, food, programs, and training workshops all operated under the name Asterisk, the Hope Drive Foundation Asterisk, the same name that had once been tainted by corruption, now reborn with purpose. Clara managed most of the operations, while Ethan preferred to stay behind the scenes, fixing broken toys, repairing chairs, or teaching kids to drive the old car that sat in the yard. He found joy in simplicity, in being needed, not admired. One evening, while watching the sunset, Clara asked quietly, "What will you do next?" Ethan smiled. Nothing spectacular. Maybe travel a bit. Maybe write a book. A book? She said, surprised. About what? About the truth, he replied. About how losing everything was the best thing that ever happened to me. She laughed softly. You think anyone will read it? He looked at her, his eyes gentle. Maybe, but even if they don't, I will have written it. And that's enough. Weeks later, a local publisher released his book, Asterisk, The Road Back Home, Asterisk. It wasn't a bestseller. It didn't make him rich. But letters began arriving from across the world, from teachers, single parents, struggling workers, all saying the same thing. Asterisk, you made me believe again. Asterisk, one letter written in a child's handwriting simply said, Asterisk, dear Mr. Ethan, thank you for helping us. I built a toy car that really moves now. One day I'll drive you to school in my real car, Sam Asterisk. Ethan read it aloud to Clara, smiling through tears. Looks like someone's keeping his promise, he said softly. She nodded. You changed his world. Ethan looked out the window, watching children chase the fading sun. No, he murmured. They changed mine. That night, as the stars appeared, Ethan walked through the orphanage courtyard alone. Lanterns hung from the trees, glowing softly like memories that refused to fade. He paused beneath one, letting its light fall across his face. He thought about everything, the wealth, the betrayal, the pain, the redemption. All of it had led him here, to this quiet peace. He whispered to the night, thank you for taking everything I didn't need so I could find what I always did. From the doorway, Clara watched him with a small smile, as if she understood every word he didn't say. She turned off the lights one by one, leaving only the lanterns flickering in the dark, symbols of lives rekindled, of hope reborn. And there, under the quiet stars, the man who once owned. The world finally belonged to it again, the final lesson. Years later, time had softened the edges of Ethan's story. The world had moved on, but his legacy quietly remained in every life he had touched. The Hope Drive Foundation had expanded to multiple countries, each branch carrying the same message. That compassion, not wealth, builds empires worth keeping. Ethan was older now. His hair had turned silver, his hands lined with years of work that no longer involved boardrooms or luxury cars. But his eyes still held the same quiet fire, the same light that had guided him through ruin into redemption. One crisp autumn morning, he sat beneath a tree outside the orphanage, a notebook open on his lap. The children were running around the playground, their laughter cutting through the cool air like sunlight through fog. Clara approached, now wearing the confidence of a leader, not just a caretaker. "You're writing again?" she asked, smiling. Ethan looked up, returning her smile. "Trying to," he said. "But it's harder than I remember. Maybe I've said all I needed to say." She sat beside him. "Then maybe it's time to listen instead." He closed the notebook gently. "You're probably right." They watched the children for a while in silence. One little boy, Sam, now a teenager, was helping the younger kids build a wooden go-kart. The same boy who once drew cars on scraps of cardboard was now teaching others how to make something real. "Look at him," Clara whispered. "That's your legacy, Ethan." Ethan nodded slowly. "No, that's his. I just gave him a place to start." Later that afternoon, Ethan gathered the children in the courtyard. They sat cross-legged, eyes wide with curiosity as he began to speak, not with authority, but with gentleness. "When I was your age," he began, "I thought the world was something to conquer. I believed that winning meant having more money, more respect, more everything. But then I learned that the real victory isn't about what you own. It's about what you own." A little girl raised her hand. "Even if people hurt you?" Ethan smiled softly. "Especially then, because kindness means the most when it's hardest to give." The children listened intently. Clara stood in the back, watching, her heart swelling with pride. Ethan's words weren't rehearsed or grand. They were simple truths forged in the fire of a lifetime's mistakes. He continued, "You'll grow up and face choices that scare you. People will try to tell you that money is everything, that being powerful means being better. But remember this, the richest people I've ever met were the ones who never stopped caring." When he finished, the courtyard was quiet for a moment, then filled with applause and laughter. One of the kids climbed into his lap and hugged him. "Thank you, Mr. Ethan," the child said. "I want to be like you when I grow up." Ethan smiled, his eyes misty. "Then be kinder than me. That's how the world gets better." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Clara found Ethan sitting alone by the window in his office. The golden light fell across his face, soft and warm. "You look tired," she said gently. He nodded. "It's a good kind of tired. The kind that comes from finally doing something right." Clara leaned against the doorframe. "You've done more than right. You've changed lives." Ethan chuckled. "Maybe, but life has a way of changing us too." He stood slowly, looking out the window at the lanterns hanging from the trees, the same lanterns from years ago, now part of every evening ritual. "Do you ever wonder," he said quietly, "why we go through so much pain before learning what truly matters?" Clara walked closer, her voice calm. "Because if it were easy, we wouldn't understand the value of peace." He turned to her with a smile. "You've grown wise," she grinned. "I had a good teacher." As night fell, Ethan took one last walk through the orphanage. Every wall, every corner carried memories, laughter, struggle, forgiveness. He stopped by the garden, where his father's old photo now hung on a small plaque. Beneath it, the words read, "Asterisked to those who remember where they came from." Asterisk. Ethan touched the plaque gently. "You were right, Dad," he whispered. "I had to lose everything to find my way home." The wind rustled the leaves, as if answering. He returned to his office, where the final page of his notebook lay blank. After a moment of thought, he picked up his pen and wrote slowly, "Asterisk final lesson. Asterisk. Asterisk wealth fades. Titles vanish. But the love we give, that's the only thing that outlives us. Asterisk." He set the pen down, feeling a quiet peace settle over him. Outside, the laughter of children floated through the air once more. Years later, when Ethan Cole's story was told, it wasn't about the billionaire who lost everything. It was about the man who learned what mattered after he did. His name became a symbol not of power, but of purpose, a reminder that no one is too broken to start again. And somewhere, under a tree in the courtyard he built, the next generation of dreamers played, proof that sometimes the most extraordinary journeys begin. The moment we stop running, Ethan Cole had found his home, not in mansions or marble halls, but in the hearts he helped heal. The final lesson was complete.